All right, Chris, thanks for being with us today. To start off, let's talk about a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you've done, and how you've ended up at Google Ventures today.
Out of college, I decided to go to New York and work in an investment bank. I chose one that was focused on tech because I'd always been passionate about tech. Okay. I was the kid with the computer, locking myself in my room, being a complete nerd in high school and middle school and all that.
Right.
And I guess I didn't really know what investment banking really involved. No one at my university went to an investment bank, but I thought all my friends that were on the East Coast at Ivy League schools said like that was the job to get. So it was fun, I learned a lot, but at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't support the entrepreneurial mind, if you will. I ended up determining that it wasn't the right fit for me for me.
Right, okay. So how did that transition into you moving into tech?
Yeah, and then I switched because I thought management consulting might be better. It was the exact same.
Okay. Still in New York?
Still in New York, but I had managed to convince the management consulting firm I work for to transfer me out to California.
Okay.
So they moved me out to California, and then about a month or 2 months later, I was part of the end of 2008 layoff season, if you will. Here I am in San Francisco, just moved here, not sure what I want to do, laid off, trying to figure out what would be fun to do, and I ended up coming up with the idea to start a conference called LayoffCamp. So my first kind of foray into the Bay Area tech scene was doing a conference called LayoffCamp, which was kind of a spin on a bar camp, which is kind of like a tech unconference, if you will. So that was my first foray into technology in the Bay Area, and we put on an event where about 1,000 people. Then I put another one on in LA and another one on New York, and then I kind of open sourced the model. People were putting them on all around the country on their own, and that was kind of the first way that I kind of built a brand that I was associated with.
And did you meet Kevin through LayoffCamp? Walk us through how it led to Milk.
How I got to Milk.
Right.
So
and I know there's another company in between.
In between,
right?
yeah.
Right.
So the first person I met kind of in the Bay Area tech scene was a guy named Matt Van Horn. He's now the VP of Business at Path. And he had worked at Dig. So Matt was the way I kind of met some people at Dig. At this point, I wasn't connected to anyone really that I started Milk with. But slowly through rock climbing, actually, is how I ended up meeting Daniel and Jeff, who were both early co-founders at Milk. Right. And so, I spent the next year kind of doing some freelance work and just meeting people and trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Now, this freelance work, was it coding?
No. I was helping people throw events. I was helping people do financial forecasting. Really anything that someone needed help with, I was helping out with. And then finally, I decided, and this is totally off topic, took a 7.5-month trip with my now wife and traveled around the world.
Okay, very nice.
Came back, and I had submitted a talk to South by Southwest that was about being laid off in the tech community.
Right.
And that talk, and our trip ended going to South by, and at South by I was like, all right, now's my time. I need to figure out what I want to do. My goal was to get a job at a startup. I wanted to work at a startup that people recognized, that had a great brand, that had a bunch of great engineers. I wanted to position myself for what was next. Which could be start a company, join another. I didn't know, but I figured if I could work with smart engineers at a company that people recognize, that'd be good.
Right.
And that company was Simple Geo.
Okay. What did they do? Well, what did you do, rather?
Simple Geo was a location data service provider. They basically made developers' lives easy when they wanted to do location stuff in mobile and web applications. I honestly, when I was trying to work there, still didn't know what they did. I tried to figure it out. It was all APIs. I was not a developer, but I got the space. I just didn't get their product, and I just, I met with their CEO, who I'd been introduced to. I met with the person they had just hired in business development, and I was like, I want to work here. And I had learned that if you are non-technical and you don't want to do sales, you need a job in business development. That's the role. If someone's like, what do you do? And you're like, oh, well, I'm not a designer and I'm not a coder. And it's kind of like, what does that mean? Well, if you're not a salesperson, then you do BD. And I just wasn't I like selling, but I didn't want to just sell. I wanted to build something. Okay. And so BD seemed like where I could do that.
Okay.
So worked at Simple Geo for about a year, a little less. Right. And at South by Southwest again, Kevin and I got connected because he'd asked around for, who's a good BD guy, got introduced to me, and we all decided to start Milk right around South by that year.
Interesting. And so how did the idea for Milk come about? Like, well, let's talk about that first.
So the idea came about because we didn't actually have an idea, right? So Milk, originally, Kevin and Daniel had always said we should start a company together. They'd had this like vision since they worked together at Dig, and they'd been playing with ideas, but they never really knew. It wasn't, I have this great idea, let's go build it. It was, we want to work together. And so Kevin and Daniel brought on Jeff, brought on me, brought on 2 other iOS engineers, and we kind of brought together a team of people that wanted to work together and build something cool. And we raised our first round on that idea alone. Like, we didn't have a business idea. We had a few things we were playing with, but we weren't sure what the big idea would be.
So let's talk about, like, how did you manage to raise a round without having an idea? For people out there who, think that you need to have an idea there and have to have a business plan in place and all that stuff done.
The short answer is you be Kevin Rose.
Okay.
So the real answer is you need an idea. Like, if someone emailed me and wasn't a Kevin Rose or a Kevin Systrom or an Evan Williams and was like, I would like to raise a round of financing from you at Google Ventures, I would be like, no, like it doesn't work like that.
Right, so you need to have past success.
Yeah,
okay.
And we've done some studies at Google Ventures, and the general investing ecosystem has as well. And past successes is a very key indicator for future successes. So, that's one of the reasons we do that, but that's a very unusual circumstance to be able to raise a round without anything. But we did have a tech team, and if that's the first step, right? Like, if you can build a product, you have a team that can build a product, and you have some ideas, most companies just need to spend a month, build something, and then raise a round. We were just fortunate because of Kevin and Daniel and who the team was.
You had a track record.
Yep.
Right. Okay, so what were some of the difficulties you ran into when starting Milk from a business perspective? So
yeah, so my role was the business guy, right? Like, we had engineers, developers, designers, and then Kevin, and I was in charge of everything else. So in the early days, I came in and I was like, all right, we don't have payroll, we don't have a bank account, we don't have any filings with California, literally we had nothing. So we took an approach early on, and there's reasons to and not to do this, to kind of do everything in a way that would scale.
Okay.
So depending on how much money a company has, I would advise to or not to do this.
Okay.
But we hired a law firm, we hired an accounting firm, things that probably cost more than they needed to in the first 6 months, but that when we grew and eventually when we were going through negotiations with Google, it made it so seamless. We didn't have to go create financial statements to send them. We didn't have to make sure our docs were in order. And so the cost might have been $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 all in for the first year for legal and finance and accounting. But for us, it was worth it. So my job getting in was, all right, who is going to manage our HR? Who's going to manage our accounting? How do I set that up?
Okay, so for founders out there who don't have a startup round necessarily, should they take the time out to learn accounting, finance, the legal stuff, or should they just not necessarily hire a law firm or an accounting firm, but hire someone onto the team who can do that?
For any company, it's good for someone at the company to understand the fundamentals. Does someone need to go learn how to use QuickBooks? Absolutely not. For most companies that we see at Google Ventures, the accounting that they have in place for the first 6 months is almost nothing, and that's fine. But for someone to understand what that means and what that will mean down the road, and to understand, why it's important to have your formation docs and filing your, all your tax documents for your stock purchase agreements and all that stuff done right. It's important to understand that. And the co-founder or founder of a company should take the time to learn that. Okay. But that's something you can learn in a few days, having a conversation with friends and that kind of stuff. But do you need to hire a business person to run your company? It just depends on what you're building. It's good to have one person that is least familiar with it.
So I watched a talk once. I think it was the CEO of Mint.com. Okay. And he said that when he was raising his round, he was told that for every non-tech guy that you have in a tech startup, it decreases the valuation of the company. First off, is that true?
No.
Okay. Well, because he said, I think his numbers were $250,000 for everyone that was not a tech person was deducted from the
purchase price of a company,
right.
or the valuation?
Oh, the valuation of the company.
I mean, there's a million examples of why that's not true. Like,
Right.
if you took all the non-technical people out of Salesforce, like, they would have no revenue. Or they would, but they wouldn't be growing at all. So you can't, there's no way to blanket state that that's the case. I know that had we done, during acquisition talks, I know that if you took a person that was a non-technical person out of the mix in a lot of scenarios, like, that company would be worth less.
Right.
Like, if some company came to me and they have 4 co-founders and it's an engineer and 3 business people,
Right.
is that usually less desirable than 3 engineers and 1 business person? Yes. Like, at an early stage, there should be more engineers
Right.
than
To build a product.
business people, but that doesn't mean that there should
It's
be
necessarily
none.
a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Let's take a step back because I forgot to ask this. But what are some of the difficulties you personally ran into on the business side when starting up Milk?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest difficulties was just keeping everything in order, right? You've got documents that need to be signed by everyone. You've got paychecks that need to be issued, and it's just really important to kind of set aside, like, here on this day of the week, like, I'm going to make sure that all the payroll's actually entered and stuff. Once you get to a stage that you're paying people, salaries and stuff, like, you have a responsibility as the person in charge of that
Right.
to your employees. There are legal concerns. I think one of the most interesting things was when I was interviewing people, I had to, like, step back and actually realize that, like, I had, like, a legal responsibility as a corporation in the United States, in California, to treat a potential job applicant a certain way. And you just have to realize that you have these responsibilities that you might not know about or might not be used to. And they come in a number of different ways, and you just have to get used to it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of people, when they're going through all these pains when they're starting a company, they look at companies like Milk or, Dig, and they're like, oh, they probably didn't have anything, because you see successful companies and you don't realize that they go through some of the same things that, everyone goes through in starting a company.
The hardest thing starting Milk was that we needed to figure out an idea. And we basically we knew we had a good team, and it was, what do we want to commit to? And I think the hardest thing in this ecosystem right now is that people want an idea and they're scared of pivoting their company. So they commit to something so hard that, like, they won't change paths. And there's kind of a stigma around the pivot that I don't think maybe there should be.
Okay.
Because the most important thing is to just build something.
Right.
And if that doesn't work, like, change what you're building, but
And
don't
move
sit
on.
there and not build anything.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about LayoffCamp.
Sure.
It was pretty much national, right? You did it in multiple locations. What did you talk about there? Now, this was this recession, so...
This was late 2008.
Right. What did you teach? Was it only tech stuff?
No, so the interesting thing about LayoffCamp was it was done in San Francisco. It was modeled after Bar Camp. It had a very strong influence from technology, but it was not a technology event at all. The general thesis was the economy was terrible. People were getting laid off pretty much every day, and people didn't have skills that they wanted. People would, like, complain and be like, oh, I can't get a job, I need skills. And traditional job training just wasn't working. And, then there's also this whole freelance community in San Francisco that kind of, they're not laid off, but they don't have full-time jobs.
Right.
So what I kind of wanted to create was a place for people without the kind of full-time job situation to come together and learn from each other.
Right.
So when you show up in the morning, there's nothing on the agenda, but there's a giant whiteboard with a bunch of rooms and a bunch of sticky pet notes. And you could get up and say, you know what, I want to talk about Twitter. I know so much about Twitter, and I'm here to create a session about Twitter. And so the really cool dynamic that ended up happening was, we had people, in their 70s, and we had people in their 20s. And there was this one guy who probably, let's say, early 50s, who his whole life he was a hiring manager. So he'd probably interviewed hundreds and thousands of people his whole life. And he knew everything it took to kind of light up his eyes when he was interviewing someone. Nothing to do with technology, but so he led a session on how to interview and how to wow an interviewer. Similarly, there was like a 20-year-old kid who knew everything about Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and technology, who was able to teach that guy who knew nothing about tech skills. And then likewise, that guy was able to teach the younger. So basically you had people that were learning from their peers instead of learning from me or someone else how to, do anything. You know,
Right.
the sessions range.
Skill sharing,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
So I have a question for you. So since we're in an education space, like if I learned something from Treehouse, taking those skills and showing it to a company and saying, hey, I learned these things, but without having an accreditation, like how did LayoffCamp take the skills that you taught people and like give them a way to show it to companies so that you can say like, hey, I've learned these new skills now with LayoffCamp?
So we didn't do stuff like that, but I don't think we needed to, because when we hired an engineer at Milk, we weren't saying, show me your certification from some
Right.
PHP seminar. We were saying, show me what you built.
But see, that's easy with tech. You know,
Yes.
you can build a product. What about some other skill
Exactly.
sets?
So if I'm going to hire a BD person,
Right.
or you know, an associate at Google Ventures,
Right.
I don't care that they have, you know, experience doing BD. I care that they can use their BD skills, their hustle, their enthusiasm, their passion,
Right.
to convince me that I want to hire them.
Right.
So, you know, I was going to Simple Geo when I wanted a job. I pitched the founder. I tried to pitch one of their investors. I was using the kind of skills that I would need to have in that role to get the job. And so I think that if you want to show someone that you know how to interview, wow them in an interview. If you want to show them that you know how to use Twitter, like use Twitter well and link them to your Twitter page. The same thing applies in the business side, but you just it would be difficult for like an introverted business person to be able to convince someone that they had all these skills
Right.
unless they can demonstrate them.
Right. So moving on, let's talk about investing. What is it, you know, what brought you to Google Ventures? Like, what do you do?
Right there, let me pause you and say, so the reason I'm at Google Ventures is because Milk, about 1 year after we started, was approached by Google. We were at a point in time where we had built our first product. We'd kind of realized that that product wasn't going to just be a breakout success that we needed to dedicate everything in the company to, but we'd also realized that it had some legs and we weren't sure what to do. So we kind of started thinking, what could we build next? And during that same process of being unsure what our next project was, we were approached by Google and kind of talked to Google about, you know, how could we work together? You know, we had a lot of visions for how Google could improve social and mobile and all of that. And so that conversation kept going. And eventually, you know, 4 of us from Milk joined Google.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what brought you to Google Ventures.
So that brought the 4 of us to Google Plus.
Okay.
Google's a great company. Like they really want everyone at the company to be happy. So genuinely, they kind of ask you, they're like, you know, you got acquired by Google Plus, you're working at Google Plus right now. Like, how do you feel? And I was a PM, and I'm very much like to be out and about, being social. And it turned out that a PM role wasn't the right fit for me. You know, I love product, and at a startup, doing product is great because there's a lot more that you do than just the traditional product role. At Google, like, to be a great PM, like, you need to love, like, writing PRDs, and you need to really understand that. And I understood it, but I knew that it wasn't my passion.
Gotcha.
So when I went to my manager and was like, hey, you know, I've been talking to the Google Ventures guys. They invested in Milk. I love what they're doing.
Right.
She was like, that makes sense. She's
Okay.
like, why don't you do that?
So let's talk a little bit about what the structure is like at Google Ventures. You know, like what do you guys do?
Sure. So we're a pretty large firm, right? We have over 50 employees. We basically have an investing team of about 14 employees, and then we have a whole nother team of different hands-on groups that help out our portfolio. We've got a design studio with 5 designers who basically, depending on the size of our company and how much we have invested, do everything from office hours, talking about design with our portfolio companies, to actually helping, you know, prototype things out, to sitting down with their designers and walking through UI flows.
Okay, so
and everything
very
like that.
hands-on.
Very hands-on.
Okay.
We have a bunch of engineers from data modeling, machine learning, statisticians,
Okay.
PhDs. The goal is, there's some of these areas like design and really heavy data modeling and recruiting. We have 5 recruiters that help our portfolio companies, where it's really hard for an early stage company to dedicate a person or a headcount to recruiting. And it's a huge thing that almost all of our portfolio companies need. So we found that as a way that we could provide a lot of value, because not everyone needs a full-time recruiter. So if we have 5, that can serve our entire portfolio.
So you're a VC plus an incubator, essentially.
I wouldn't say that we're with an incubator, but
Right.
we're a VC that offers a lot of the same value add that an incubator would.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you guys invest, what do you look for in a founder or a team? You know, what qualities make a good leader or like translate into a successful business? Now, you don't have to get into Google strategies or how you know specifically what you guys do, but in general, you know.
Yeah, so when I sit down with the founder, which happens multiple times a day, I'm really looking for someone that is passionate about what they're doing, incredibly talented, put together a team that's capable of getting them to the next step. You know, I'm not looking for a founder that's also necessarily going to be able to run the company when it's a $500 million company, but I'm looking for someone that's really able to do what they have, tackle the challenge that they have at hand right now.
In that time period,
yeah.
basically.
I've seen a couple companies where it's just a business guy and he has this dream of raising, $1 million and hiring engineers. And, I'm typically looking for the person that has already found the team that can build what they want to build. And usually that's already built something. There's nothing more amazing than going to a meeting and someone saying, here's my app, play with it. And it's not
very
trying
tangible.
to decide what it could be, it's decide what it is. And the cost of building something, so you guys at Treehouse know, you're teaching people how to build products all the day, all the time. Different coding languages, different platforms. Because that's so easy, all it takes is your time.
Right.
And so you can build something tangible that I can play with. Half the time, some of these pitches, they just say, here's my site, let's talk about it if you're interested. And I can just go use their app. I don't even meet them at the first step. And so that's really important. So I love being able to see the product, and I love being able to really just understand the passion that comes with the entrepreneur.
Okay, so how do people get in touch with you or any investor in general? Should people network their way up, or find you through a contact, or should people just email you things? What's the most effective way?
So the most in startup business, life, anything, the most effective skill, someone who's running something, whether it's a company or anything, the ability to network, to hustle, and to be that's important. So if I get an email from a friend that says you have to talk to this guy, I'm going to respond a lot faster than if I get an email that was
random,
sent to 100 people.
Right.
It's not even personalized to me, and it was sent out. The same thing goes when you're trying to find a job. You could send 100 resumes to 100 different companies, or you could pick 3 companies and do everything you can to get in. Right. And that's, when I decided I want to work at a startup, I picked one company and did everything I can to get a job there.
Right.
I didn't even interview at any other companies.
Right. Okay. So, so you said you're looking for someone with passion, with the ability to get the tasks done. Does that have to be? What if it's a business guy with a trying to start a technical company, doesn't have technical skills? Because the stigma in this day and age is you need to be able to build your own product. One of the things we talk about often is, should founders be able to code? And so what if a founder comes to you who can't code but is super passionate? Does that come across as a positive thing?
So I'll take myself as an example. I know sometime in the future I'll probably start another company. Maybe it'll be technical, maybe in the future we do things that I can't even predict, right? But I know that if I were going to pitch a VC right now saying, hey, I want to start this company, I would feel ill-prepared if I didn't have someone on my team that was able to build what I wanted. So similarly, I think that if I had a passionate business co-founder come and meet with me, and he's like, I have this great idea, my advice to them would be, why don't you go find someone that you can work with and build your product with? Because it's important that you have that team in place. Money doesn't solve the ability to meet someone, so you're not at a stage where money gets you to the next step, because the next step, you don't need any money.
Right, you just need to find someone.
Yeah.
Okay, say if I found a VC or an investor, what's the best way for me to get my idea across and convince them that I'm worth investing in? Usually you need a business plan, you need financial projections, you need a model.
So in the old days, that was true.
Right.
I would say I have never seriously considered a company that sent me a business plan with financial models, forecasts, projections at the seed stage. So at Google Ventures, we kind of do seed investing, which is what the team I'm on, and then we do tons of other investing at Series A to Series D, all the way up and down the timeline of a company. At the seed stage, if someone's giving me financial projections, they basically mean nothing.
Right.
So I'm not even looking for them. Some of the companies don't even know how they're going to make money, let alone how much they're going to make 5 years from now.
Right.
the concept of a business plan and putting together an executive summary is similar, right? When someone mails me a 5-page business plan executive summary, I just kind of think this person doesn't get it. Because right now, what I want, I mean, if I were to craft the perfect email that someone would send me, it would be, here's who my team is in 1 to 2 sentences, here's what we're building in 1 to 2 sentences, caveat that 1 to 2 sentences needs to address the problem they're solving. I don't want to hear that you're building Pinterest for cats unless you have a strong reason why Pinterest for cats is something that we need,
right?
Which I don't think it is right now.
Okay. Cross that off your list, guys.
I'm always looking for someone to say very concisely who we are, what we're doing, and what problem we're solving. And if they could do that in a few sentences and attach a link to a product, a link to a demo, a deck, anything right at the beginning, it just makes it easier for me. Because someone sends, hey, I've got an idea, I'd love to share it with you. Then it's on me to say, okay, will you share it with me? And then they say, here it is.
Right.
So
initiate that conversation yourself.
Absolutely. Once I have it, I can go look at it. Chances are, if you send me a deck, I'll read it. If you send me a deck and I read it and it's just crazy and I have no idea who you are, like that much lowers the likelihood that I'm going to react quickly. So definitely get an intro, but also like
be proactive.
Be proactive and be prepared so that the person reading your email can do everything they want to do, which is evaluate your company.
Right. Okay. And now to wrap it up, just final question. A lot of people out there have ideas. What advice do you have to those people? Because you started companies and now you're in the place where you help companies out. So do you have any advice to those people to take that idea and execute on it?
So ideas are kind of a commodity, right? Like you probably came up with 5 ideas today of things that, this doesn't work. Right. So instead of an idea, I love when people come to me with problems. So that's the first step is, I have an idea, it would be really cool if I could use my phone to send a text message in the shower, because maybe sometime I remember something. So the idea stems from the problem that I want to do it. But then think about, is this a problem that people really have? Like there are a lot of times where I'm like, this would be so cool. And then I'm like, do people really need this?
Right.
So the first step is vet your idea to make sure it actually solves a problem that lots of people have, that people are willing to pay for. Like if you can create a business out of the idea and solve a problem, then it's probably an idea worth pursuing.
Right. I mean, not to cut you off, but with ideas, you need to kind of gauge the success. And a lot of people are secretive about it. Do you recommend sharing ideas initially?
Yeah, so every now and then I get an email with someone asking me to sign an NDA. And you probably won't find a single investor that will sign an NDA. And if they will, like, they're probably not the kind of investor that really gets the space. Mostly because we see so many ideas. I can't agree to one company that I'm not gonna know what they're doing. And we have our reputation based on the fact that we don't share pitches with other people. Right. But to go through the paperwork of having our legal team, it's just never gonna happen. Similarly, the idea isn't what I'm investing in. I would say there's not a single company that I've ever thought of or invested in, or thought of investing in or invested in because of the idea they had. It's who they are. So, share your idea. Don't share it to someone that you think might go build it and try to do it, that could do it better than you. And if you think they could, work with them. But the general idea is share your ideas with people to get feedback, but don't share it to the world. But don't be afraid of requiring people to sign NDAs or anything. At the end of the day, what's going to be successful is that you're passionate about this idea. You are the one, that's who investors are going to bet on.
Okay.
So to finish the previous thought, it's, make sure that you're sharing it with the right people, get lots of feedback, and then if in any way possible, build something. I don't care if it's, there's this great app called Prototypes that lets you take a bunch of pictures and create links between pictures by touch. Then you can pull it up on your iPhone and it acts like an app, right? You could jump from page to page to page and you can interact with it, except all it is pictures with links at different parts of the pictures that all work together. You don't have to be technical to do that, but it lets me, the investor, understand what you're doing. I'll probably want to see that you can build it before I'd invest, but it would definitely help me vet an idea 10 times faster than you just saying it.
Right. And now in this economy, and with you having experience dealing with, LayoffCamp, what advice do you have to people who are, trying to build a company in this economy.
This is a great time to build a company, right? There's a lot more investors than there have been. There's a lot of resources. There's incubators and accelerators all over the country, all over the world. People are starting to become more entrepreneurial. You see a decline in college students wanting to go get a regular corporate job. So it's a great time to meet co-founders, to start companies. You know, customers are now a whole lot more open, I think, to buying from small companies than just always buying at the Walmart or something like that.
Right.
So I think that my advice to people is, if you're passionate about it, go for it, right? Like, you can sit, and I've done this, like, and debate whether this is worth doing, but the people that can get over that and just do, and the people, I always tell companies that are thinking, oh, we're not sure if this is the right thing, and I'm like, just keep doing something.
Right.
Don't stop. The people that don't stop, and the people that like get over the fear of starting something, or the fear if they're doing the right thing, those are the people that end up doing amazing things.
All right, Chris, I think that's all we have for today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.